Isaiah is literally changed when he perceives the glory of God. And if you really want a cool study, read Isaiah and watch what kind of a man he becomes after Isaiah 6. I mean, you're not even out of Isaiah 6 and you start getting messianic prophecy. It's not very much further. You get the first virgin birth prophecy. You get a little deeper into Isaiah and you get Jesus on the cross. He was wounded for our transgressions and bruised for our iniquities, and the chastisement of our peace is upon him. The Isaiah of Isaiah 5 couldn't have saw any of that stuff. He needed the glory. He needed a revelation of the glory of God. If you got a revelation of the glory of God, something happens. So look at this screen. The inferior position is to cry woe to the people. The superior position is to cry grace to the people. But I put in parentheses, this is my stuff anyway. You can put whatever you want in parentheses when you're making it up. This is just what I see that John's doing. And that is, I use the phrase easy and difficult. The inferior position is the easy position because it's easy to just find out what's wrong with your neighbor. Right? I mean, if you want the easy way through life, it's easy to be a whiner and a complainer and a problem finder. It's really hard to be a problem solver. But it's easy to be a problem finder. I mean, you can walk into any room and go, I can tell you what's wrong with these people. Okay, well, that didn't take a whole lot of insight. You didn't even need to pray about that. You just walk in and find stuff you don't like. The superior or more difficult position, the more difficult posture, the way to orient yourself through the world is to cry grace to people that you know don't deserve grace. And they haven't earned it and they can't pay for it and some of them aren't even asking for it. Well, that's hard because you want people to earn stuff. So I think what we see John do is show us the inferior and then show us the superior. Show us the easy position and show us the difficult position. So John 1:14 again. And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory, the glory as of one son of his Father, full of grace and truth. What's that glory look like? It looks like what we saw in the book of Isaiah. But what does it mean to those of us who are redeemed? That is where theology becomes practical. Okay? And so you may have all of this good stuff about what God looks like in his glory. In fact, we could have included the moment where Moses comes to the Father. I'm so used to calling God the Father. Moses wouldn't have went to him and said, Father. He calls him God. Moses goes to God and says, show me your glory. Remember that moment? And God says, I'll show you my glory, but you can't see my face. Nobody can see my face and live. I'll tell you what, I'll hide you in the cleft of the rock. And when I walk past, I'm going to put my hand over your face. And then when I get past you, I'll let my hand off and you can watch me. And the old King James, I think, says you can see my hind parts walk away. In other words, you can see my back as I walk away. And so he does. He puts Moses in the cleft of a rock and he puts his hand over his eyes and he walks past. And the Bible says, when God tells Moses this, he says, when I walk away, I will show you all of my goodness. And what did Moses ask for? Show me your glory. What does God show him? All of his goodness. Because God's glory is God's goodness. God's glory is not woe is this world. God's glory is God is so good. Okay, so if you see the glory of it, this is why, and I wanted to bring this back. I told you this earlier. Some people go, boy, we had the glory of God was in the house tonight. And it was almost always in regards to a bunch of people feeling repentant and feeling bad about their sins and needing to get straightened up. That wasn't the glory of God. A lot of times it was a condemnation fest. Because the glory of God will always expose people to the goodness of God. Only in an old covenant will the glory of God come in the room and you scream your lungs out and fall on the floor in fear. So when people say, boy, if the glory of God walked through this room tonight, some of this junk would stop, you'd be on your face before the Lord. I think if the glory of God walks through the room, you will be so enamored of the love of God that you will want to know his Son in a more intimate way. That might bring you to tears. That might cause you to fall down on the floor. Granted, I don't know how everybody responds to that kind of stimuli. Some people are one way, some people are another. But the reality is that God's glory is not here to turn over the rocks of your heart and shine flashlights on your sin. Okay? Because the blood's supposed to have taken all of that stuff away. You're supposed to be a new creation with nothing to hide because you are what the Bible says that you are. So the glory of God would simply expose you to the goodness of your Father so that you would see how much he loves you and you would see how good that he is.